I was hooked off the first episode.
I'll tell you one thing, I miss it tremendously.
And they said it's an MMA show with Nick Jonas at DirecTV, and I said, that sounds like a Mad Lib. That doesn't sound like a real show.
I've done a fair amount of TV, and Kingdom is the single best experience I've ever had.
I became such a fanboy of the show.
It was so beautiful and so exhausting, and so I mean, I've never been so enthusiastic and wanted to cheer so much ever.
For actors, it was just thrilling, right?
It was explosive. It was an earthquake.
Hi, I'm Sam Heifel, and welcome to Entertainment Weekly's Around the Table. I'm here with the cast and creator of one of my favorite all-time shows, Kingdom. We're going to go through. We'll start. We have the creator, BYRON BALASCO.
Hello.
Alvy himself, Frank Grillo.
Hi.
We've got Lisa, Kiele Sanchez.
Hi.
We've got Jay, Jonathan Tucker. Christina, Joanna Going.
Hi.
Alicia, Natalie Martinez.
Hi.
Keith, Paul Walter-Hauser.
What's up?
And the appropriately named Mac Brandt.
Howdy.
Have you heard of this gym? Navy Street MMA. It's in Venice. It's run by this guy, Alvy Kalina. You've probably heard of him. He's a legendary fighter.
Most guys run from fights because they don't want the answer to the inevitable question that they whisper to themselves. Am I one of the weak or am I one of the strong? Where do I line up in the pecking order?
I'm going to start by throwing this all the way back to 2014, I think, somewhere around there. BYRON, where did just like the idea for all of this come from?
For a long, long time, I'd been a fan of the sport. Back when you had to go find the tapes back by Faces of Death in Blockbuster, I would watch them, and I was just intrigued by these people who would fight kind of no holds barred for really no money or anything like that. And they came from all different kinds of walks of life. Tried to talk about it for a while and would kind of get met with glazed eyes because people thought maybe it was going to be too lowbrow or something like that. So I went home and started writing it on spec, and just really wanted to prove that it was a family drama about the people versus just a, combat sport, kind of B-movie show. So that's kind of how it all started, just sitting down and writing the script.
Nick Jonas isn't here, but BYRON, I do want to hear you talk a little bit about casting him, because that was, he'd done a little bit of acting, but this was very much so, I feel like, a different kind of role. What made you think he could take it on?
The only thing that convinced me that he could do it was him coming in and auditioning, because, my biggest fear was the perception of the show being changed because, a pop star was in it. So I was a little reticent to see him, but he came in. And he came in 2 or 3 times, and it was just undeniable because he was so good. And he was so perfect for the role, and he had such a great internal intensity to him. And there's a real inherent sweetness to Nick as the guy, as a person, that the character of Nate really needed, which was really hard for a lot of people. It's kind of a weird essence you sort of can't fake. You sort of just have to have it. And he did, and there was really he was the best guy, and so we took him.
Well, I'm going to go through, I want everyone's Kingdom origin story is what I'm calling it. So we're going to go through and just talk about the first time you even heard about this project, what kind of excited you. So we'll start with Tucker.
I thought cage fighting, MMA, was blood sport. It was the worst thing for our country and for the world. And then I picked up BYRON's script at the very beginning of pilot season there in 2014. And I had my heart changed overnight. In one 60-page read. And then I originally came in for Ryan, but I really wanted to come in for Jay, and I kept asking to go in for Jay, but I couldn't. After the first meeting with BYRON, he reached out directly and asked if I'd read for Jay, and I was like, that's what I was trying to do originally. Got to come in and work with Frank, and we had a really good time. And that was it.
Right. Kiele, what about you?
My manager said that BYRON was interested in me for the part of Lisa, and I read a couple pages, and I was like, no, I can't do that. It's not me. It's somebody else. I pictured her very, very different from myself, and I thought I would fail at it, basically. And then I did a movie with Frank, and he was talking about this amazing show he was a part of and that he was doing. And Byron came to the set of the movie that we were doing, and I got to meet him, and it just kind of fell into place. Like, we had a conversation, Byron and I, and was really, really just taken by his work and wanted to be a part of it desperately. And then it just went from there.
All right, Frank, you're up.
I also was sent the script and read it and thought, wow, this is somebody who really wants to explore the other side of MMA. It was like, let's go and do this. Let's go and have some fun, because no one has touched this subject matter and has really touched upon how difficult it is for these families and these fighters to kind of even exist. So it was a love fest from very, very early on.
Joanna, what about you?
I started reading it and got really drawn into the characters, particularly Jay. And I kept turning pages looking for this character of Christina. Finally, we got to the point where we found her, and she was Jay's mom. And I was just like, I want to be part of these characters. I want to be that guy's mom. So I went in and did an audition.
Paul, what's your story?
I was working at the Five Guys in Studio City, and I was in an apartment in Valley Village. I think it was a 2-bedroom, and we had about 5 people. I was living that scrappy wannabe actor life. I got the audition, and they said, it's an MMA show with Nick Jonas at DirecTV. And I said, that sounds like a Mad Lib. That doesn't sound like a real show. It doesn't sound like a real thing. I went in to read for the role of Michael, which ended up going to Ronnie Jean Blevins. But I had an emotional morning where I was literally thinking about moving home or switching professions. And so I go in and read for Michael, and the casting directors look at me a little sideways, and they go, I think we thought you were going to read for Keith. And I said, who's Keith? And they say, well, that's the character getting bullied by Michael. And I said, oh, I'm way more of the bullied than the bully. You got to let me read Keith. And I go back in, and all the pain I felt from wanting to leave LA and possibly skip out on acting entirely, I put that into whatever I did, and I got the part by the grace of God and Byron Belasco. So that's why I'm here.
A little extra note on that. He was really only supposed to have one or two lines in the pilot, and that was it. But first day of shooting the whole series, he was working, and saw him and Matt Lauria together and was like, this dude's in the series. And so literally the whole character got created really after Paul did his, first day of work, basically.
All right, Natalie, let's go to you.
Actually, the show had already been going on because I came in later on, and they sent me a file link with all of it. And with everyone's performance, I was like, wow, like what Joanna said earlier, I want to be a part of this. I didn't care in what capacity or what, just the honor to work with everybody, because I was hooked off the first episode. Now I'd already been training, Muay Thai for, I think at that point, like 5 years. So it was a passion of mine that I really loved. So the fact that I can get paid to do what I love to do, which is awesome. Some of my favorite times on set were just me and Frank basically just doing a session, like it was not written at all. It was just us literally working. I wanted to practice my hook, and it made it into the show.
Mac, you want to round it out?
I was running a bar in Hollywood, and Byron would come in occasionally, and then the writer's strike hit, and he came in more occasionally, like every night, and we just buddied up. I mean, he would sit at the end of the bar, and I would ignore all the other customers, and we would just, shoot the yeah. Then I remember I was sitting, my daughter had just been born, and she threw up on me. She was like a month old, and I was sitting in bed with her, covered in baby puke, and Byron texted me and said, I just wrote your character. You're a nurse and a drug dealer, and we're just going to call you Mac. And I just remember looking, like I was bartending 6 nights a week. I'm sitting with this kid who won't sleep. And I can picture the text right now. I just remember reading it being like, I don't know what the hell that means, but I think it's awesome. I had to go in and audition. I think I was the only person to audition for the role of Mac. And Kate Caldwell, who was the casting director, was great. I walked in, I did the scene, and she goes, I don't think I have any notes because the character's just written as you. would you do anything differently? And I was like, yeah, I could be louder. And she was like, okay, just try that.
All right, Matt Laurie is here.
Hey, Matt.
Hey guys, I made it a long last.
Yeah, buddy.
Patience, dudes and dudettes. My origin story. It was just this incredible script that I read. My manager was like, "This is the next thing for you," and I had never read anything like it. I had never had an opportunity to play a role like Ryan Wheeler before. At some point, I was heading out for a trip, like an overnight trip with my wife, and I was driving through the desert. And I got a phone call and like veered off the road. And I was like, it's Byron, the writer. And it was basically like, hey man, I think you can do this. We have to convince everyone else that you can do this kind of call. And I was like, ooh. So then I taped something else, changed it up. And then I had my final call back with Frank, and Frank didn't hate me too much. So it all worked out.
Frank, you want to do the honors and make the official announcement for me?
All of us at some point have spoken to each other about, God, I wish this show was on Netflix. So Netflix has now bought all 3 seasons, including the second season, which is really 2 seasons. So,
I was waiting for it.
Anyway, Netflix, starting on July 1st, worldwide, will be airing all of the Kingdom seasons. So it's very exciting, and we got our wish, and who knows? Yeah.
All episodes, all seasons on Netflix, July 1st.
For you all, has time changed your perception of the show? And obviously, when you're in it, it's very much so like you're working, you're doing it every day. How has like taking a step back changed your perception of like the experience of making Kingdom?
I'll tell you one thing. I miss it tremendously. The experience that we shared, and the ups and the downs, and the goods and the bads. You know, I knew that people throw around that term family, way too much in Hollywood. But I really believe on this show, as far as an experience as an actor, we really were a family, and we were down and dirty, and nobody was paying attention to us, and we were making phenomenal television.
The making of the show itself had a certain alchemy that kind of lined up with where a lot of us were in our lives on a certain level. I think there was a sort of scrappiness to all of us, and like a desire to push things in a new direction and try things and sacrifice. But like Frank said, I mean, I miss it dearly. I miss the family. I miss all these faces that I see right here. I miss all the conversations we would have about the characters, because I really tried to write my life, but also everybody's life into it as much as possible.
When'd you get out?
Yesterday. You and Albie, how long has it been going on?
2 years. Don't with my life.
You don't know him like I do.
I know he's a superstar, and I know he's 28, and I know he's got a lot of fight in him.
And it was so hands-on. Like you said, he really wrote for us. There was a lot of freedom. And like Frank said, no one was really paying attention. So we really had full reins over our characters, how we wanted to portray them, what we wanted to do, how far we wanted to go. I mean, these guys, the discipline I saw with the weight cuts and their bodies and the training that they went through was kind of the most amazing thing. And I look back on it, and I was so grateful to be a part of that story and that moment in time. And there's definitely very far and few in between when you find a show like that clicks on all the levels. And I'm so happy now that everyone on a worldwide base gets to see the true art that this show really is. Like, I'm so excited for that, and everyone here.
I miss the world of it, and so much. And at the same time, I sort of can't believe I did that. I mean, being so far away from it now, I'm like, wow. I don't know if I could do that again. How did I do that?
I've done a fair amount of TV, and Kingdom is the single best experience I've ever had. I mean, I used to go to set on days I wasn't working. I would show up in early. I would read scripts I wasn't in, which is definitely something I don't do.
Oh, totally.
I know. And I would watch the episodes when they aired. But I would say the key part about why it was so great is Byron. I mean, he was so open to everybody's ideas. there was no risk of failure. He wasn't a guy who thought that the thing he wrote was the most perfect way to do it, and he would let people try it.
I love that Mac brought up reading scripts he wasn't even in, because like I became such a fanboy of the show where like if I was headed to bed at 11:45 at night and I saw my email ding on my phone and say, you have PDF episode 206 of, I read that immediately. If I had to wake up at 2 a.m. for a prayer vigil, I would have stayed up till 1:45 reading the script because it was that good. There were days where I could leave set and they're like, it's 2:00, you're done for the day. And I would look at the call sheet, and if I saw that Tucker and Loria had a scene together, I was like, I'm going to go grab some food and sit in Video Village because I'm going to go take a free acting class. That's how good the people were on our show. You know what I mean?
I certainly have like my favorite arcs for each of your characters, but like looking back, is there kind of a specific arc or storyline that was kind of like a favorite of yours?
I think mine have to be the fight scenes. I had a blast doing fight scenes. I remember one of the first ones. I was so excited when Justine Kitch, I did a fight with her. Never used the double. I fought the entire time, and I clipped my foot with her shin. I think I had sprained, but I didn't feel it until hours after wrap because my adrenaline was rushing so much because we literally fought for, what was it, like 6 hours, 7 hours?
I loved eating Carl's Jr. Carl's Jr. people were on set, and I ate 8 of their double cheeseburgers, and they were stunned or horrified, one of the two, and they were like, we've never seen anything like that. It was fun. I was not well afterwards.
But I just loved, I'm thinking about commitment, and I'm thinking about my favorite moments. I loved Mac in as it was written in the script, the walrus fight at the beginning. It was just like, it was so beautiful and so exhausting, and so I mean I've never been so enthusiastic and wanted to cheer so much ever. And then of course I worked so much with Paul, and getting to see his courageous work and selfless work. Every single time I ever acted with either Kiele or Frank, in the simplest of conversations in Frank's office or in Kiele's office, I just always, if it was my coverage first, when it would turn around and we'd be filming them and their side of the conversation, every time I would leave the set and go, I just got caught acting, because they were so sincere and so authentic and truthful and just so simple. Like neither of those two are capable of breathing a word that is not incredibly human and real. Everyone on the show is so hard to keep up with. And I found myself in deep water and just feel so blessed that I'm coming out the other side a better person and a better actor because I was challenged by all these incredible people.
Almost every scene, every time, I would not pick up my cue at one point or another because I was so busy watching them. There was a scene with Kiele in her office. It's just the simplest scene, but she's so good. I don't know. I was completely lost in the world. She's so good. Like I knew what my lines were, but I was so into watching her and listening to her that when it came to me, I was like, oh, I speak here. I forgot. Like it was Frank and Tucker and I had these scenes that were just, I mean, it was the best.
Kiele and I had some beautiful, beautiful scenes together that were, as far as I'm concerned, some of the best nuanced work that I've certainly ever done. It always blew me away that we would have these great fight stuff and stuff between Matt and I and Tuck, and then he would write this stuff for Kiele and I and be like, how is this guy doing this? So that to me really set the show apart from being a fight show. Do you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I went to see my guy again this morning.
Oh, yeah? How'd that go?
Good. Yeah, really good. Maybe we could start doing it together.
I think you should focus on yourself right now.
You need anything else at the house, just let me know.
Thank you.
It was fun to see the masculine and the feminine. It was fun to see the light and the dark. And I Like, I love a moment like when Tucker in season 1, he says to Jamie's like, "You're not going to shoot me, are you?" And he's like, "I'm not going to shoot you." And then he pulls his shirt off and he goes, "You're going to wish I did." And you know he's about to get a beating, and you as an audience member are like ready to go. But then contrarily, there are moments like Matt Lauria, the stuff with Matt playing opposite MC Gainey as his father. There were some emotional things that he did that were not showy. They were very lived in.
Because the show was very raw. It was very personal. But sometimes you just wanted to watch Paul Walter walk down the median of a busy street on his way home from prison. And it was hilarious, but it was also, it would bring a tear to my eyes because he brought so much, there was so much emotion and need and want to be loved, which I think so many of the characters of the show are grappling with, is their identity. Where do I fit in? Who loves me? And how do I keep a foothold in this world?
That's what's exciting for an audience on Netflix to get to tune into, is you get this, the light in the dark. You get this extraordinary grit and, and the power of the fight world and the bigness of that. I think with the walkouts, for instance, that we got to do for fighting are just, for actors, it was just thrilling, right? Without having to fight. But you get that, but then you get these moments, these private moments that allow an audience to understand a character as the character is kind of understanding themselves.
Well, I do want you guys to talk a little bit, for those of you who played fighters, about the training, about what went into the literal physicality of these roles.
Well, I'll just say this. Matt and I had a lot of phone calls and a lot of coffee after wrap at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. It's like, dude, are you going to do this? We're going to do this. Let's go to the gym.
One of the relationships we haven't really talked about that is obviously at the core of this is Alvy and his sons, especially Jay. And to have like these fighters, these super masculine men, have such a complicated relationship. What were the conversations that Frank and Tuck that you had kind of getting into establishing what is this relationship?
For me, I took my relationship with my father as the template for Tuck and I's relationship, because at the end of the day, I think these two guys were very similar, Alvy and Jay, and it was constantly this, because they were very similar. Tuck and I we became more friendly after we were done with the show than during the show, because there was this thing between us. It was explosive. It was an earthquake every time these two characters were together. And I think both of us as actors knew if we became those two guys that were kind of hanging out and buddy, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be as effective. And we always were kind of circling each other. We were always cool with each other, but we were always kind of circling each other. And I think it worked brilliantly for the show. And then subsequently, when we were done, him and I have become, he's my buddy. So very, very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, they're the same guys. I wouldn't say it. I don't like saying it in front of Frank, but there's Jay's a little more self-aware. And by that, I don't mean to say he's more mature, but he knows he's a up. He knows how bad he is. Or at least this is Jay's perspective, which is now my perspective. He knows he's an addict. He knows he's his own worst enemy. And Alvy is as well. I just don't know if Alvy totally knows it. I mean, that's kind of the kind of beauty of Byron's writing, is that it's just so kind of complex, and there's oftentimes just not a right answer for any of these things.
My favorite thing about Ryan is his love of Keith, is that it's such an important part of what he brings out for Ryan as well. So I'm interested for Paul and Matt, kind of what the discussions were that you all had in this very interesting dynamic your characters have.
To my own creative onus, I was going to do my thing. So I was a little worried that Matt wasn't going to embrace that. And he's such a handsome, collected, intelligent, thoughtful guy, and he comes from actual acting school. So I was like, this guy, I'm going to get kicked off this show. But I found a lot of receptivity, and if anything, he was teaching me as I was going knowing that I was a little green and unpolished. He was kind of a bit of an acting mentor to me, especially the first season.
Just to brag on Paul a little bit, it was like, I think it was like, what was it, Byron? Like it was like 1 or 2 lines.
Yeah.
And then he came in and just lit it up to the point where like camera operators and directors would be like, holy shit, like, did you see that? And I'd be like, motherfucker, I was in the scene too. But no, it was such a beautiful character. We talk so much about like the man is who the man is, the woman is who the woman is. It's not just one thing. It's like, none of these characters are very easily definable. They're not archetypal. They're not two-dimensional. They're many things.
Hey, Jeffrey. I don't like when you bring him in here, Ryan. I've told you that because if you accidentally drop him...
I'm not gonna drop him, Keith.
He's gone forever if you drop him because they're not gonna help you look for personal items here, Ryan. It's too dangerous.
I could talk about this for hours. We have to wrap up. So I'm going to throw one last super hypothetical question out there. This hits Netflix. Say it takes off. Obviously, this was a show that was canceled. Byron, you and I talked when it ended about like you weren't expecting the last episode to be the last episode, even though it was beautiful and kind of worked in a way. Is there a world in which, if given the opportunity, there is more kingdom?
Yes.
Yes. 100%. I mean, look.
I've given Byron so many storylines for Alicia. I'm like, I have this really good idea.
Yeah. I mean,
I want Jay and Mac to make a Christmas episode. Just that's it.
Yes.
If, by the grace of God, this thing does, connect with the zeitgeist, that is not that outlandish of an idea. And it has been talked about loosely. It's always based on who's available and who's willing. But, it's one of the first things my agent asked me. I said, in a heartbeat. Yeah, that's my answer, in a heartbeat.
And my answer would be a quote from Goodfellas, which is, "F you, pay me." I believe
I was just going to say, Paul, do it. He's cheap. He
Netflix.
just said how affordable it was.
Yeah. I mean, look, the way the show is built, you could keep, it's really just, every season has just been what's going on in these people's lives. So easily, I think you could do another season if you wanted to. I mean, look, there's nothing easy about making the show, but I'm saying the show could hold another season if the world wanted that. Yeah.
I mean, the people who have seen this show are fanatical about the show, and it's part of like what has made the fan base they've been so excited because they feel like they're finding something, they're discovering something that other people haven't been able to find, and that's been an asset for us. But there's no question that there's a whole group of people out there that are going to get to sit back on their couch and discover why so many people are so passionate about this story.
This show will be like The Wire, where the second iteration of people coming into it then realized what they had missed out when it was airing. Every single person in these boxes and the people not in these boxes that were on the show deserve Emmy nominations. And the fact that they didn't get them when the show was on, it pisses me off to no end because nobody watched it. Tucker, Keely, Frank, Joanna. I mean, they would have swept the category.
I agree with that, man. I remember seeing that first season, and I was just like, this is the most amazing acting I've ever seen. Like, just to even share a screen with these people would be an honor. So you guys did such an amazing, amazing job, man. Happy the world gets to see it.
Yes. Hashtag Kingdom TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Netflix.
Yeah.
Thank you, Netflix.
And thank you, Sam, because you've been riding with us since day one. You've been our holding the light.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you guys for being part of EW's Around the Table.